Good morning, class. I am your teacher today, Clarissa Machano, and I am very excited to teach you about our lesson or topic. But before that, I will present you the objectives of this lesson. At the end of the lesson, the students are expected to deliver a prepared or impromptu on an issue employing the techniques in public speaking. Now, let's get started. What is public speaking? Public speaking, it is also called oratory or oration. It has traditionally meant the act of speaking face to face to a live audience. This means that it is a process or act of performing a speech to a live audience. Public speaking is commonly understood as formal face to face speaking of a single person to a group of listeners. These include formal and informal speech. Unlike its predecessor oration, public speaking involves an interplay not only body language and recitation, but on conversation, delivery, and feedback. Public speaking today is more about the audience's reaction and participation than an oration's technical correctness. A speech is either formal and informal, meaning it can either be a formal address delivered to an audience or the daily used grammar and words to communicate. The only purpose of either those speeches is to cut across a message well enough to invoke the desired response from your audience. Now we proceed to the types of speech. What are the two types of speech? These are the formal speech and the informal speech. What is formal speech? Formal speeches are made when you're speaking to a sizable audience that you don't personally know. These are professional events where you're expected to make a good impression on the audience. The nature of these events therefore demand a similar respectable tone of language and speech. Example are job interview, speaking to an individual of authority, delivering a lecture, making a presentation, giving a pitch, motivating the audience, hosting a business events, and others where for, uh, you must ensure to speak formally. Next is the informal speech. What is informal speech? Informal speech radiates a very comfortable and relaxed energy. They're friendlier than formal speeches and they often carry the personality of the person addressing them. Next are the example of public speaking situations. Number one is introduction speech. What is introduction speech? This is a speech in which one speaker briefly introduces an upcoming speaker. And number two is the welcome speech. A speech introducing the audience to upcoming events. And this usually happens during a program. Like example, our Christmas program or Christmas party, there is a welcome remarks. And number three is toast. Toast is a ceremonial speech praising or conveying goodwill or blessings in honor of a person, accomplishments, or events. Number four is tribute. Tribute is a speech honoring a group, organization, or concept but usually focuses on person. And number five is eulogy, a speech honoring a person who was died. Number six is testimony, a speech sharing an inspiring story with an audiences. In a Pentecostal church, evangelist or a born again church, it is usually the same. That is why testimony happens every Sunday. It is a sharing or sharing experiences where you are tested. And number seven is farewell speech. This happens when someone resigned in an organization or in a company. And number eight is presenting an award. Number nine, job presentation. And number 11 is class presentation. Class presentation is under a speech, or it is also a speech because uh, if you are reporting or you are presenting something, you are giving information to the class or to your colleagues. Next are the objectives of public speaking. What are they? Number one is to inform and educate. If you want people to learn about a new concept, develop a new skill, or learn something new about a subject they already know, then the purpose of your speech is to inform the audience. In informative speeches are used to provide information about a topic to the audience. Lectures, briefings, and demonstrations, webinars, and all types of informative talks fall under this category. Number two is to persuade and convince. Sometimes you have to convince the audience to change their attitude or behavior, or you want to persuade the audience to accept your point of view. Persuasive speeches are commonly used to sell products and services, get people to support, and cause political campaigning. In addition, one example of persuasive speech is to persuade other people to visit your hometown or the tourist spots. And number three is to entertain. Humorous speeches, the most common kind of entertaining speeches, but they are not the only one. Basically, any speech whose main purpose is to entertain people can be classified as an entertaining speech. An entertaining speech could include one or more interesting anecdotes, jokes, unique experiences, thrilling stories that delight the audience. And number four is to inspire and motivate. Motivational speech compel listeners to achieve noble goals or achieve their highest potential. These speeches draw on emotions and sentiments to inspire the audience. Did you know that a commencement at a college graduation is is an example of inspirational speech? Even a keynote speech rally is still an example of inspirational speech. What are the characteristics of public speaking? Here are the characteristics. A good speech should be number one, clear. What does it mean by this word clear? Speech should be clear. Clarity is the first main feature of a good speech. Your speech should be successful in conveying to the audience the ideas, emotions, facts, or arguments you want to express. Number two is vivid and concrete. Speech should be vivid and concrete, including in it concrete facts, easy to perceive and visualize. Number three is brief. This speech should be brief because The concentration of an average audience does not last more than 20 to 25 and the minimum is at least 18 minutes. Hence, an ideal speech should not exceed that time unless the audience is motivated by certain interesting fact during the speech. And number 4 is interesting. Speech should be interesting. Quotations, anecdotes, and humors often make a speech very interesting. The quotations should be familiar and accepted by experts. Anex- Anecdotes should be novel, brief, and in good taste. Humor should be typical, spontaneous, and gentle. Number 5 is audience oriented. Speech should be audience oriented because a good speech is always audience oriented. For delivering an audience oriented speech, one should study whether the audience is the general public or specialized. How large is the audience? What is the age of the listeners? What are their social, religious, political, and economic views as prejudices of the listeners? And what would be the response of the expected audience? Now we proceed to the importance of public speaking. Number 1 is to win over the crowd. What does it mean by this? To win over the crowd. An important skill to have in business and especially in public relation arena is the skill of persuasion or the ability to win over the crowd. Inside and outside the workplace, the power of persuasion can carry you far, and it all starts by honoring those public speaking skills. Mastering public speaking results in an increase in confidence and, with that, a cool and collected presence in front of an audience. But this not only happen for business. And number 2 is to motivate people. A great public speaker attains the power to motivate his or her audience to do something, stop doing something, and change a behavior or reach objectives. Public speakers are leaders who are able to inspire their audience. As a public speaker, your role is to influence your listeners and create an environment where everyone walks out to grow. Number 3 is to inform. The ability to inform is one of the most important aspects of public speaking. From presenting research paper and PowerPoint presentation in school and presenting ideas, informative public speaking is a vital component of a successful career or work fields. When you have When you have their attention, a good informative speech sharing your knowledge of a subject with an audience enhances their understanding and makes them remember your word long after you've finished. Now we proceed to the mode of delivery in public speaking. Number 1 is impromptu. What is impromptu speech? The impromptu speech is delivered with little opportunity to prepare. It, its main virtue is that it is spontaneous. Its main shortcoming is that it is usually not well planned. Next is extemporaneous. Extemporaneous speech is somewhat more formal than impromptu speaking. You have an opportunity to plan, and the resulting speech is better organized than an impromptu speech. You will normally rely somewhat of notes. But you will not read to the audiences. or to the listeners. And most public speeches are delivered extemporaneously. Number three is memorized. A memorized speech allows for a well-planned expression of ideas. When presenting a speech from memory, somehow, speakers have tendency to lose a certain amount of naturalness and sometimes sound and look quiet wooden. This means that the possibility of forgetting this speech is another negative aspect of the memorized speech. Number four is manuscript. Manuscript manuscript speaking is relied on for more formal occasions. Speaking from a manuscript, you are able to be very precise and you can carefully control the exact message the listeners receive. Naturally, it takes longer to develop a manuscript speech, and often the manuscript becomes a barrier between you and the listeners. And last but not the least are the techniques of public speaking. What are they? Number one is care about your topic. Passion goes a long way when it comes to being an effective speaker. You have to care your topic so that the listener will care either. This means if you will not care about your topic, then your listener will not care also. And they will tend not to listen or they will get bored. And number two is remember your speaking goal. What does it mean by this? Make it a point to stick to this goal during the presentation. There are some speakers who go beyond the topic. They get sidetracked or off topic that sometimes it makes the listeners bored. Why? When it comes to a public speaking, you have to remember your speaking goal so that you will not go beyond the topic and you will not also go beyond the time. Because if you are not going to if you are going to deliver your speech not connected to your topic, then the listener will get bored. And it is also a time consuming wherein you can reach the allotted time. Next is support your main points. Does it mean by this? Support your main points? When giving support to a main topic, there should be an example, an illustration, or fact. And when you're supporting a point, it's best to be as specific you can be. And number four is use presentation tools wisely. Number five, practice your speech. Why do we have why do we need to practice the speech? Do you know the old saying, practice makes perfect? This is really true when it comes to developing effective speaking skills. The more you practice your speech, the more familiar it will be to you and the more comfortable you'll be giving it. That is why in public speaking, you have to practice your speech. And number six is relax. Try to relax if you can and don't pressure yourself. It will help you for that. And number seven is pace yourself. What does it mean by this? Effective public speakers know to pace themselves. They will speak at a natural pace and work short naturally pauses into their speech. Sometimes it is normal to feel nervous, and when they feel nervous, they tend to speak quickly, but speaking quickly affect listener badly and they can't understand it clearly. Thus, always observe to pace yourself. Number eight is dress comfortably and professionally, or dress comfortably but professionally. Dress professionally to make a good impression, but remember to make sure to observe good grooming and hygiene rules too. Many experts feel you should dress according to how your audience dresses. If the audience is dressed formally, you don't want to show up in a shirt or wearing a shirt and t-shirt. Likewise, if your audience is wearing a shirt and t-shirt, you don't dress formally. And now, last but not the least is use gesture but don't overdo. Meaning, overdoing a gesture is a disturbance to the audiences or to the listeners. That is why when you do a gestures, it is good enough for your speech. And this is the end of our discussion today. I hope that all of you understand, and I hope that you learn a lot from this lesson. Thank you for listening, and thank you for attending this class. Again, thank you and God bless.